Debo tomorrow. That's going to be following around the island during the swim, so we want to give a big thank you to him as well.
Good morning, gang. Here we are, swim around Key West. Kayakers getting ready to get in the water. Word of the day, phrase of the day, winging it. We're not ready, we're not prepared. What's the nutrition plan, Pat? Do we have a nutrition plan?
I have peanut butter jelly.
I got carbs. I don't know when he's giving them to me. I don't know when I'm stopping.
Don't know how.
We're winging it. But we're gonna do it. Let's get to work. Well, gang, once again, in terms of outcome, in terms of how the race finished, we took yet another L. But in terms of experience and lessons learned, well, there's plenty there. We'll get right to the outcome first. I ended up making it 10.8 miles out of the 12.4 miles of the entire swim around Key West before my body shut down, and unfortunately, I had to pull myself out of the race. Obviously, very disappointing in terms of the outcome, especially because I know I could have finished the 12.4 miles. The volume, the yardage wasn't an issue. My shoulders felt great. My body felt fine. But as I've done so many times in the past, I listened to my ego instead of my brain and made a couple of key mistakes that led to me blowing up and bonking once again. Obviously, I'm very frustrated with myself that I wasn't able to cross the finish line. However, of course, there are many positives to take away from this. The first being that I was able to swim 10.8 miles in the open water on such little training. I've still got just under a year to go till I try to swim across the English Channel, and my confidence for being able to do that is actually pretty high, despite the negative outcome, because I had such a positive process and experience getting ready for the race. To break down the race recap quickly before we get into some of the metrics, I took it very easy for the first half of the race and was in probably 5th or 6th position, somewhere between 4th and 6th for most of the race. I was going at about 50% effort for the first half, so roughly 10K or about 6.2 miles. I still felt really, really good up until this point. I felt great with my nutrition. I was in a great headspace. I was having casual conversations with my dad the entire time, who was my lead kayaker, talking to other swimmers and kayakers along the way, cracking jokes, and ultimately really just having a good time and enjoying myself in the water. This, of course, ended up contributing to my downfall later in the race when I decided to shift my mindset from just having a good time to trying to get on the podium, which occurred right around mile 8.5. Now, my first issue is with the planning for the race. I actually planned to do exactly what I did during the race, which was at around mile 9, or at about 15,000 out of 20,000 yards, 3/4 of the way through, see where my position was and try to pick up my pace a little bit after that. As an athlete who's made this mistake before, and as a coach who spent thousands of dollars learning specifically not to make this mistake, I should have known better. The cardinal rule in any type of racing, but especially endurance racing, is that you can go long or you can go hard, but you can't do both. And I tried to do both. To try to pick up your pace at 15,000 yards, 9 miles into a 12.5 mile race is just stupid. And I'll take you over to the training peaks to show the numbers of just how stupid that actually was. Alrighty, guys, to put a visual on what I'm talking about here, in the blue is the first 14,500 yards or so. So that's just over the first 8.25 miles, just before 8.5 miles. And so this is where I decided to go ahead and try to pick up the pace. As you can kind of see, if you follow this red graph, that's my heart rate. So right before I pick it up here, it's at about 140. And you can see I peak it up all the way here to 153. And that might not sound like a big difference, but the real thing here is the fact that it really jumps. That's the kind of thing you want to avoid, obviously, when you're 3.5 hours into a swimming race. So if we go ahead and take it from here to right before I hit my wall and officially was, just trying to survive the race. Here is where I went back and forth between trying to rest and kind of temper my ego and then pick it back up again. Again, if you're looking at the red, that's my heart rate, and it somewhat correlates, of course, with the pace. Not like the pool, it's not going to be a perfect correlation, of course, because of ocean currents. And as you can see, right before this big crash here, but right before I right before I gave up on the race, rather, right before I was forced to give up on the race, is this big jump in pace, and again, a couple more jumps in heart rate. And again, you only have so many matches. You can go hard or you can go long, but you can't do both. Once again, I broke that cardinal rule. So at mile 8.5, roughly a half mile before I originally planned on picking up the pace, I just decided to go for it a little early. I thought that I was in 4th place overall. I saw the 3rd place, or what I thought was the 3rd place swimmer ahead of me, roughly 600 to 800 yards, maybe a little more or less ahead of me. At that point, because of my dumb plan and my monkey brain just wanting to get a podium finish, I decided I'd pick up the pace and try to catch him. Ultimately, that led to me completely depleting my caloric state, emptying my glycogen stores, and just completely bonked, as you can see by me crawling out of the ocean on all fours. And that is where my second mistake comes in, or really my second and third mistake tied in together, which was nutrition and preparation. Now, I'm not too surprised by this, and to be honest, it's something I did plan against, but as I'll explain in my pre-race video, as I'll cut to in a second, I just wasn't in the right mental state to get ready for such a big race. And that happens. That's life. So before I wrap it up here, let's take a look at where I was at before the race, just to give you guys a little bit of context about where my headspace was at and how difficult this race was to even just get on the starting line, and why that makes me so happy that I was even able to get to 10.8 miles, let alone being able to finish the 12.4 if I just wasn't so darn silly. What's going on, gang? We are 14 hours out from the 12.5 mile swim around Key West. We are not posting this live because we are in the midst of a pity party. So we're not going to post it now. We're going to post it later. But I've always promised to be vulnerable, real, and upfront with you guys. We're 14 hours away from the race, and I'm not one bit ready. I'm not one bit prepared. I'm not even really thinking about the race, to be honest, guys. Life is just kicking my ass this week. Long story short, I'm stuck in my rental search and my lease is about to be up. So everything is kind of up in the air in my life right now and is certainly taking a toll. Obviously not just all my training, but my planning and everything else that goes into not only Project Endure, but what I do from the time I wake up to go to bed. So to deal with that life stress while trying to get organized and get all of the endless factors together to swim around the island of Key West tomorrow is just... it's overwhelming, man. It's brutal. I'm grateful that I'm so fit that I'll be able to give it a good crack. But I don't feel like I felt 2 weeks ago when I hopped out of the pool after doing 15,000 yards. I don't feel invincible. I feel very vulnerable. I'm very frightened and very scared in what's going on in my personal life. So it's certainly affecting my mindset for the upcoming race. And the reason I'm posting this after the race instead of beforehand is for that very reason. I don't want to use this to set the table for me to drop out if I potentially fail. And if I do fail, that's fine. But if I were to post this beforehand, I'm giving myself an excuse to do that. So that's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do. I'm not looking for self-pity, so I'm not posting it so that people say, no, you got this, Ryan, we believe in you. No, I've got to instill that belief and keep that belief in myself. And that, my friends, is what Project Endure is all about. So despite all that vulnerability, despite my fear, despite my trepidation with everything else going on, and honestly my own inability to just let things be and have faith that things will work out, which I genuinely do, but still just I don't have that capacity to not stress. So something I need to work on, in my own personal life, certainly affecting me as I go into this race. And again, that's what it's all about. If I can swim around Key West tomorrow in an absolute depleted state, as tense as I've ever been, with things seemingly breaking down around me, then, I can swim the English Channel if things are going right, no problem. Got to appreciate the process, the ups and the downs. So hopefully 14 hours plus 5, 19 hours from now,
we're celebrating heavy, and the weight of the world feels like it's off my shoulders. But it's important for me to show this side of myself as well. It's not always let's get back to work. It's this is me most of the time, man. I'm struggling. Anyways, let's rest. Then get back to work.
And the best part, guys, I wasn't in fourth place. I didn't account for the swimmers and relay teams ahead of me. And when I checked the overall standings after the race, turns out I was in second place. I would have had my coveted podium spot if I had just cruised to a nice, easy finish instead. So, history shows I probably won't learn from this lesson, but hey, maybe you guys can. So that's where we're at, ladies and gents. Next up is the Immolation 80-miler. We're hoping I'm going to learn from my mistakes, but stay tuned to find out. Thank you guys for checking in. I love you. Happy training, and let's get back to work.